So we have here Boyd Cohen. Boyd Cohen has been here in Barcelona for quite some time, and I have the pleasure to talk to you for a moment. Look, you have been here for all this Smart City Expo, you have been here for so many things. What do you think? What is your impression of this Smart City Expo?
The expo itself, I went to it a few years ago, and it's certainly grown in its focus and its volume of people from around the world. So it's certainly consolidated its position as the #1 conference in the world. I think there's been some evolution in the smart city space in general that you also see reflected in the conference. For example, the early days of smart cities was very much a vendor-driven, tech-focused, top-down approach, and we're starting to hear a lot more from cities and entrepreneurs about their involvement in the smart city space, and that's reflected in the expo as well, so I think that's a good development.
So what would you highlight of this expo and all these things that happen in Barcelona these days?
Well, I mean, if you take a bigger view of what Barcelona is doing with the Mobile World Congress and the expo, they won the Innovation Award for the first European Innovation Award. They also just won an award with the Bloomberg Challenge. So obviously, Barcelona is also consolidating its position as a pioneer and testing a lot of new innovations across a lot of areas. So a lot of good things happening in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm. And what is your impression of this Barcelona that is so popular in this smart city space?
Well, Barcelona is doing a lot. I mean, they've done a lot with Wi-Fi. They're trying to do a lot with open data. They're doing a lot of collaborations with large multinationals like Siemens and Cisco and Schneider. They have a very proactive office of smart cities, and not that many cities, even in Europe, have a whole team like Barcelona does, trying to play a coordinator role or an instigator role. I think they have 22 or 24 program areas that they're managing within the city. And I've had a chance to meet with a lot of the senior city officials over the last few years, and I know they're certainly committed. I think they're also trying to do a lot in innovation and entrepreneurship space. There's a lot of things like Fab Labs and co-working spaces, and also universities like yours, ESADE, that are trying to promote open innovation and educate the younger population as well as the corporations about sort of this next phase of citizen co-creation and startups in the smart cities arena.
Imagine that we had this magic wand, and then we can make you for 3 years or 4 years measure Barcelona. So, what would you do?
Wow, that's a challenging question. I think the mayors in Barcelona have generally done a pretty good job, but obviously with my PhD and background in innovation and entrepreneurship, I would be focusing a lot on that. I think one of the things that would be helpful would be sort of to create a map of the ecosystem of Barcelona right now in terms of where the innovators are, where the entrepreneurs are, what are the public policy tools that are currently being used, how effective are they, and try to understand the entire map, the university space, where the startups are, and what more can the city do to facilitate and inspire the entrepreneurial innovation space. I think, obviously Spain being in a difficult time right now economically, I think you'd have to look at areas around job creation or creating autonomous, independent entrepreneurs that are finding ways to make a living in the city. And use public policy tools to stimulate innovation and address inequality while also continuing to grow the smart and innovative space that the city has been fostering.
You have been watching, ranking this smart city space for many years. In fact, you invented the ranking for smart cities, and you were the first public starting first company, and since then, well, everybody has ranking for smart cities for everything that could happen. What do you think that is going in this space in the next 5 years in the smart cities?
I think it kind of goes back to my reflections on the expo and the evolution of the space. So when it started, it was tech-driven, large multinationals sort of pushing their agenda, And then in the last couple of years, the cities were saying, no, smart cities is ours. We own smart cities, not the corporations. Where I think the next several years are going to be, and this is to me super exciting, and of course I'm biased, but I think it's really in this co-creation, this citizen activism. I've been doing some research around civic entrepreneurs that are looking for ways to solve city problems with innovations, collaborating with other organizations with the city to help solve local challenges with entrepreneurial approaches. And I think really if you look at that, so if you look at the trends, I think it was big corporations, then it was cities saying we got to own this space and we will engage and support citizen participation in the process. And now the next step is really, it's not just citizens participating in planning or providing suggestions, it's actually citizens taking the city and saying, hey, this is our place too, and we want to improve it in our way, and we want to work with the city, but we're not just going to wait for the city to ask us for our opinion. We're going to start taking action. And I think that the cities that are going to lead in the next 5 years are going to be the ones who are able to harness and facilitate this kind of dynamic energy from the local entrepreneurial community.
One last thing. What do you think that we should try that hasn't been tried yet? We try so many things.
Yeah. If you look at the scope of what's being done around the world, there are so many innovative things happening, either that the cities are doing themselves or that the citizens are doing. So I think it's probably going to be, again, more innovation happening at the local level. I'd love to see more public policy innovation in public policy that facilitates and supports entrepreneurial activity. I mean, even what's happening in Barcelona, so to tie this back to the Barcelona question from earlier, I think Barcelona is trying to pioneer this idea around procurement for innovation, where instead of predetermining your desired specifications for a specific product or service a city thinks they need, cities are starting to say, no, why don't we just identify problems with citizens and then do this sort of open call for innovative proposals from entrepreneurs anywhere in the world that will be the best potential innovative solution for that particular challenge. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I hope we do. And then this interesting dynamic around how do you support the diffusion of innovation and the adoption from one city to the other. I really believe that a lot of people that are making this argument that the world is becoming more sort of an agglomeration of city-states rather than nations, and so cities are starting to work together a lot. Barcelona is trying to do that with the city protocol. There's a lot more work to do to facilitate that collaboration, but I think it's that what cities will be doing to actively stimulate innovative solutions to their problems, collaborating with local entrepreneurs and global entrepreneurs, and then figuring out how they can share and adapt best practices that are emerging from one city and bring them into the other. One last thing, I've mentioned this in other interviews, I'm really interested in what's happening with Amsterdam and the AMS Institute, where they have identified, they're taking the city as a lab or an urban laboratory to a whole nother level. Instead of it just being about sensors, which is an example of the project in Santander, they're also looking at the city as a test bed for all kinds of innovations, and it's a direct collaboration between 4 local universities, MIT, the city of Boston as well, city of Amsterdam, of course, is a driver in this, and then several multinationals and local companies all coming together. They're going to create their own master's programs in innovation, and they're looking at like 4 key areas in the city: energy, buildings, water, and urban food systems. The idea is that they can co-create all these cool innovations, test them locally in Amsterdam, and the ones that work, going back to my point about diffusion, finding a way to actually export those best solutions to other cities around the world and turn that into a local.
So thank you so much. It was been a great pleasure to have you here. And thank you so much for watching.